Hi, everybody. This is Pumela Schmidt, also known as Exchange Grass. I completely forgot my name today. Welcome to another episode of The Current Status, and I'm joined by two of my favorite people, and they've been on before. Well, Teresa's my co-host, but our guest actually has been on before. It's been what, 2014, 2015,
So
5?
long ago.
Yeah, it's been several years, but we're so happy to have her back and sit in the show with us. And Teresa, do you want to give yourself a little intro?
Absolutely. So my name is Teresa Miller. You can find me on Twitter as at 24 by 7 IT Connect. And I'm going to go ahead and toss this over to Sonia, who can introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia Cuff. I am a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft in Pumela's team as well, except we work in very different locations. So I am based from my home in Brisbane, Australia, where we're currently experiencing a very wet part of our tropical summer. It's hot and humid outside as opposed to Pumela's view of snow at the moment, right?
Yes, we just got 8 inches of snow today. And
Wow.
yeah. Then there was still snow. I think it's turning to freezing ice, freezing rain right now. But
Oh,
it's a little cold, and I actually have a cold right now. I think it's a cold. It's a I'm saying it's a cold right now. So if I apologize for blowing my nose on air, but sometimes you just got to do it. And today we're actually going to be talking about virtual events and virtual event fatigue, and the event that my team put on February 2nd, and it's still ongoing. The ITOpsTalks virtual event, all things hybrid, as we're going to talk a little bit about that and some of the sessions and and what it's like to be at an event during a pandemic. So who wants to kick it off? So Sonia, how was the virtual event?
look, it's kind of weird because we keep calling it an event, but it wasn't really event. It was more of a content release. But event is just one of those words that people are more used to. Like if you try and explain to people what a content release is, they just look at you with blank stares because we're all just used to events, right? The One of the main differences though was we know that IT pros are always having different priorities compete for their time. You're busy at work, you're fighting fires, you've got things going live and upgrades and production rollouts and like all of the things that we juggle that mean dedicating that chunk of time to actually sit down and watch something when it comes out is sometimes pretty impossible. And I think that that's one of the things that we're seeing in terms of the feedback from general online events is that one of the benefits of being in person was, yes, we needed budget, we needed travel, we needed to go to a place to go into a conference room, but it was somehow easier to focus on that thing because we were removed from our work environments. Yeah, we were probably still tethered to our phones and our laptops to keep an eye on everything at the same time, right? But it was easier to be in a different environment, a space, and to be able to absorb the content, to be able to talk to the person next to you, to bump into people in the hallways. Like all of those things are what we're missing with this online space. And so turning up at your desk with this list of webinars as they go live throughout your day, when you've got the emails and the systems and all the other things, it just becomes a much lesser priority because you've still got to juggle all the work stuff. And so what we did instead was we did one part of our event as a live stream where we had a session from Mark Rasinovich, and then he joined us afterwards for a question and answer session. It was great to be able to do that live because he did it in 2 different time zones for us, which was really great. And
Yes,
then
good.
we hit the publish button on 19 different sessions all at once. They all went live, and the purpose of that was so that you could go and literally choose your own agenda. So you could go, oh, okay, so that one interests me and that one maybe not so much, and that one I'll get around to later, but out of all of these, this is kind of the one that I want to watch first. And you could sit there and then and watch it. You could put some time in your calendar later on when you hopefully weren't going to be as busy. And if life did get in the way and work did get in the way, you could come back to those sessions whenever you wanted. And while that kind of sounds like, oh, so like you just pushed out some videos and I watched the recordings, we also spun up some chat channels in Discord on our Discord server. So they are still live. So you can still watch the recordings and then jump into the channels and see if there's been any questions. The speakers were jumping in there, and you could have a little bit of a connection with people who had watched the same session as you to carry on the discussion or ask some questions about it. So that was kind of our thinking, a little bit of a background into some of the fatigue that we're seeing with the online events and sort of what's missing from that in-person stuff and what we decided to try.
So I had the opportunity to, I would like to say I helped out with the event a little bit, because we were able to bring Pumala and Rick on a podcast from the Cohesity side and help promote it. But then I also had the opportunity to jump in and participate in Discord, right? And take a look at the live stream and kind of get a close look at things. One of the things that I noticed was that your team really wanted to make sure people were able to get together. And Discord was the way that happened, and it seemed really interactive. I'm just curious to hear how you thought it went. I mean, did you get the community engagement you had hoped?
Look, from an event organizer perspective, there were some interesting little learnings that came out of it. And kudos to our manager, Rick, and the support we have from Microsoft with this very growth mindset approach, that it's okay to go and do something and have reflection time and go what worked and what didn't work. We certainly saw an increase in the number of members in our Discord server, and that membership has stayed. So the people that joined for the event have stayed on, and they still continue to have conversations in the other channels in the Discord server. So it was a really great way to build community. The strange thing about it, though, was we had some channels for sessions that didn't get any engagement at all. And I'm
they were dead silent.
I know. And I'm like, okay, so like what happened there? Like, why is nobody talking about the session? But there was one in particular, Steve Seifers did one on Windows authentication internals in a hybrid world. So let me just pitch that session for a moment. Ops 108. Windows authentication internals in a hybrid world is this deep dive technical step behind the scenes of what happens when you log on to Windows. And it starts off with like, what's happening in the back end? How does it contact Active Directory and verify your credentials? Well, actually, the fast login process gets you to your desktop as quickly as possible. And then all like the token stuff happens in the back end. You don't even see it. Like, you're not waiting around for that to happen before you can get you to your desktop. And he goes right through to, okay, so what if the computer is Azure AD joined, and what happens if you've got single sign-on, so that you're then going to go into an Azure and M365 resource, but you've only entered your on-prem credits. Like, how does all that work in the back end? So super geeky and technical. Crickets in the Discord channel, like not a single question about the session. And yet when I went back to the session thinking, oh my gosh, like Steve is never ever going to want to come on one of our events again. Like, that was a complete fail. He's like expecting this flood of questions and get nothing. Steve's session was our second most popular in terms of views. Wow. And I just put it down to, dude, like, you rocked that session so hard that nobody had any questions. Like, you answered everything. And Rick brought up a valid point of, when you're in person, there are some sessions that you go to that at the end of it, you've either got it enough that you don't need to go up and ask the speaker anything, or it's like sort of so overwhelming that you need to go away and like digest it and think about it for a little while. And then you get other sessions where there will be a throng of people at the bottom of the stage waiting for, the speaker to get off the stage and ask them all their individual questions. And even the in-person sessions are a bit hit and miss like that. So the Discord experiment was interesting. We had some sessions that had a lot more engagement than others. We had one for Mark Morozinski and Grace Picking did a session, Ops 106, called How to Be an AD Hybrid Health Hero. And they talk about, if you've connected your on-prem identity to the cloud, to Azure AD, what have you got in place to make sure that those methods, those different connection methods, depending on your architecture for that, is healthy and the syncs are happening and you're not having any issues. And they had very great detailed practical technical tips for monitoring the health of that connection for your environment. And the Patch and Switch show actually picked that up and did a watch party where Mark and Grace joined as well. So that channel had a lot more engagement because it was used for the watch party as well, and sort of got a lot more questions and answers. So the results kind of surprised us in ways we weren't expecting, but we do love the fact that we gave it a shot, and now we're kind of diving through so what does that mean? Like, yeah, it was interesting.
That is interesting. So the metrics the way you determine success are different by way of how you did this event.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty fascinating, just what you described. I'm still actually kind of processing it a little bit, right? But
it is different, right? Like even as being part of the event, we're so in tune to how we go to events physically. Yeah, we actually had a retrospective this morning, and I had brought up the point where most people are used to a registration. They're used to a content catalog. They're used to like this big marketing, hoo-ha. It's just like this big campaign. And we did it like the complete opposite in terms of we didn't have registration because that was based off feedback, right? And people didn't want to register. So we're like, well, let's try this. Let's try an event without registration. And then after we did a retrospective, like, yeah, maybe we could have had a registration or something of that sort, just to see who's coming and things like that. And just like we didn't have like an event page where people can go to. We was more like we had a blog, right? And we actually had 2 blogs that talked about it. And looking back, an event page probably would have been nice. Just one area to go.
That's what people are used to.
Yeah, because we are ingrained that when we have an event to go to, whether it is an in-person event or a webinar, there's usually a page that you go to. And we didn't have, we tried it. So, we look back and go, maybe next time, we'll do this different. Content catalog. We're used to going and picking out sessions like, oh, I like that one. I'm going to, hit select and it's added onto my calendar.
I want it on my calendar.
Yeah. Like little things like that I think we took advantage of at least I did at an in-person event. Those little nuances, like, okay, I'm just going to click here. I'm going to filter through, click. I want to attend all these. But virtual, it's slightly different. Virtual, our event was completely different where there was, we had a list of sessions, but it wasn't like, we were putting it on your calendar. It was based off feedback that on demand when you have time to watch it. So that was definitely some learning lessons, I feel, for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of those sessions are still live at aka.ms/ITOpsTalks. And that page is an aggregation of all of the different sessions that you'll see on 1 or 2 pages with their different thumbnails and their titles. And you can go in and not only watch the videos, but we also have links to resources. So if you're interested in learning more about how to set up Azure AD Connect, for example, there's a link in that session to go straight to the documentation at docs.microsoft.com. And that kind of speaks to the long game that we're playing with that event. And so most people will send out an email or do a bit of a wrap up after an event to say, oh my gosh, we got so many thousand people registered and so many people actually attended, and this is how long they watched the sessions for. And while those stats are interesting to capture as a moment in time for an event, we kind of had another agenda for this content that we're seeing how it's going to play out, and it needs a little bit of time to analyze it and see how it does work out. And that is, this content primarily has a larger or has a longer lifespan, we think, than just the one event. Things like those Windows internals and how that works, the authentication process, that hasn't changed much at all over the years. And Steve does a great job of talking through the evolution of the processes, but that's not going to change very much in the future as well. And it's the kind of content that you might need to go and look up in 6 months' time. And so we're hoping that the combination of what we talked about, where we've placed it, and the search engine juice that we get out of publishing it as a blog post with an embedded video and some information about the session and then links to the resources means that it's going to stand the test of time as a bit of a ongoing resource that people will come in and find, just like our documentation at docs.microsoft.com. I mean, how many times have you gone to search for something that you're trying to do in your environment and you found a blog post from 2014 on somebody's random blog site, right? And so we're kind of hoping that the content that we've released will have that kind of longevity, also because it's not primarily about this is the newest feature and the latest version of the product, which does tend to age. And as I said, the topics that we're talking about are sort of more foundational. So that's kind of the long play for the event. And we're also keeping a close eye to see how that plays out in terms of that long tail of content views and people getting access to the answers that they need.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a question about the decision not to do registration. So I'm actually one that feels you probably could do some registration, but I understand why you might not too, because then all of a sudden you get all these marketing emails and it floods your mailbox. But if you opt into registration and it's perhaps clearly just for feedback, and you're very transparent about its purpose being more along those lines, I think people would be okay with it. I'm curious, I guess, what are your thoughts on that? But then maybe even how did you get feedback from people if you didn't have that?
So each of the, and that's one of the things that we learned, each of the blog posts, which is in essence the session itself, including the video, has a link at the bottom to its own feedback page. So we are relying on people when they've consumed that content that they'll see the link at the bottom that says, what do you think of the session? Click here and give us some feedback. It did mean that we lost the ability to send them an email after the content was launched. Another thing that we talked about as a team in hindsight was coming up with a more generic entry portal for that feedback. Maybe the feedback page is one form where you have the opportunity to pick the session from a list of the sessions if you want to give specific session feedback, and add that as into the end card at the end of each of the videos. So there's a few little opportunities that we think that we would probably do again. I think the interesting thing to me about not doing a registration page was the fact that we wanted to make this content freely available to anybody, including the search engines. And so it wasn't paywalled. You didn't have to come to a site and log in to get access to the content. And that was kind of the driver of, well, if we're not going to paywall it, if we don't need people to log in to access it, and we want people like all over the internet when they're putting it in their search engines to find it and watch it, what is the benefit of a registration except for it to be a numeric counter? And the numeric counter of who signed up to watch it isn't necessarily going to equate to who did watch it, because the registration isn't the only entry point. And we all know that there is a dip between the number of registrations you get and the number of people who do actually log in to watch a session when they have to do that. But I think it's more... I think we learned two things. I think the event page is good to bring everything to one spot for people because that's the experience that they're used to. But I think that, we've been talking about ICS files and the ability to add something to your schedule. So I think we kind of misread or misunderstood the importance of people to go, look, I love that I've got access to all the content. Help me make it easier to build that as an agenda, to put that into my calendar so I'll go and watch it. Because at the moment, I've got to manually go in and create a calendar entry and then copy and paste the link of where the video was. So we're looking at how we smooth over that process.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say I really did enjoy the event, and I love the passion that the team put forth and, organizing it. I think it really, really was great. So I just wanted to share that. I mean, I know I've asked a lot of questions on the why, and I think it's important to hear. You guys did a great job. Thanks, and I'm excited for the next one as well.
Look, we learned a lot, but it was fun to be able to experiment. And it's nice to come back and share those learnings with the community, right? Because a lot of the times it looks like Microsoft has this big slick marketing machine in the back end, and we release these big flagship events like Ignite and Build and how amazing is that? So to actually talk about a technical thing that we tried is this let's go and experiment effort and share that back to the community, because that's exactly what our communities are doing, right? Everyone is trying to figure out how to do online in a way that suits their business goals and suits their audience and community. So the more that we can sort of share the learnings, absolutely the better. One of the other key points for the content itself was the ability that we gave our presenters in terms of the free range that they had with what they spoke about. So we had, Oren and I did 5 sessions together with speakers. It went from one end of the scale of 2 people co-presenting that had slide decks and demos all worked out. And in a conversational style, Oren and I would talk to them as they were doing that presentation. We'd ask questions as we went along, but they had the most structured presentation in terms of slides and demos and the things that they wanted to talk about. And kind of moving down the scale a little bit, Ben Armstrong's session about backup, he would bring up diagrams like Visio. He'd share his screen and he would like drag and drop little icons around, and he would just like plan it out as he went. So that was kind of his style, and it gave him the free range to present like that. And then Jeff Woolsey was like no slides at all. I think he brought up one about Azure Files because he wanted to show something about cloud tiering, but that was a lot more of a conversation, and the whole session kind of just bounced naturally from one path to another. So we gave our speakers the ability to turn around and go, look, talk about what you want to talk about, talk for as long as you like. So we didn't lock them into only 30 minutes if there was a lot of stuff that they wanted to cover, because our viewers will fast forward the bits that they're not interested in. And it gave them the ability to get the message out about the things that they wanted to tell customers, and hopefully becomes a resource for them in the future. So I'm sure that, you know, if Steve gets the questions about the authentication process, he can now go, I did this great session, like go and watch the video. I don't need to sit here and it helps him scale the messages he wants to get out as well. And that is one of the things I think that we've seen missing from some of the technical events, where timeframes are short. There are a lot of product groups that need to get a lot of messages out, and giving our experts the free range to really go deep. That level 300, level 400 content is hard to fit in amongst all the other competing priorities. So that was a very key point for us that we were mindful of too.
It's exciting to see where this could go long term.
I think one of the coolest things about the event was that it was highly technical, but yet personable. It really, it had that set, like you could actually, it was conversational. It made you feel like you're not intimidated by the speakers, you know, with their PowerPoint deck and their fancy demos. It was like, oh, we're just chatting up in a, you know, at the conference, at a hallway. And it had a very personal feel to it, which gives you, so this is me. I think I absorb information better. And I know others are the same way when it comes up, you know, when it's more of a conversational style, it's personal. You feel like you know this person. It's not just somebody just staring back at the screen. And I love the fact that my teammates were on video and asking questions, being an attendee, and it brought out all the different personalities of the speakers. And to me, that makes a big difference when you are attending a conference, whether it's virtual or in person. Because I feel like the speakers, their presentation style makes a world of difference when they're presenting something. If they're very dry, you're just kind of like, yeah, okay.
Or if it's too rehearsed. It doesn't feel
natural.
authentic. Yeah.
When it's authentic, it's natural. Yeah, you feel like, okay, this is real, you know, and you actually are listening to it almost like a movie, or you're watching it, and it's just, you absorb that naturally better.
Yeah,
as I'm trying to talk, you know, with my head almost exploding from my cold.
There is a very different vibe to watching videos online as opposed to sitting in the room and watching someone on stage. And I think that speakers and presenters feel like they have to make it perfect. And especially when it's pre-recorded, it gives them the ability to go, not quite sure that I phrased that properly, or I tripped over that word or whatever, so I'm going to repeat it. Or people who aren't as confident might go to the other extreme of heavily scripting what they're going to say. Whereas when you're a speaker on stage, you don't have that luxury. Like, and when you do turn around and make a mistake, or you realize that you haven't explained something quite well, we get to see that human moment of you turning around and going, oh, well, actually, like, hang on a minute, let me just like, maybe we approach it this way. But most of the time you just kind of move on. And I think speakers are harder on themselves because they have this picture in their head of what it should have been, that the audience doesn't know, and it just looks great to the audience anyway. But you don't get up on stage and read from a script, right? And most speakers that I know, when they go on stage, the talk has been practiced and the slides give them the cues. Your slides are literally, this is the next thing that you're talking about and the points you wanted to hit. And then the conversation that you have about what's on that slide or how you do that demo comes out more naturally because, you know, you're not reading it as a script. And then, you know, we have people that have a tendency to not be able to relax as much when they're talking to this little black piece of plastic that's staring in front of them. Without that sort of feedback and energy from a live audience, we get a few people that just kind of freeze up and they lose a bit of their energy, and they literally get stage fright more from being on camera than they do from being on a stage in front of people. So there's all of these components that means like online is hard.
It's very difficult. I know I've done some talks too where I'm like, if I can draw people to be on camera, even just in the very beginning to say hello, it actually makes a difference. And depending on the event, many will. Of course, the size of event can prohibit that from happening, but just that moment of personal connection, I noticed even will draw out more questions. So when that opportunity comes, I take it because it's hard. It is so hard to just
virtualing is hard.
Camera.
But virtualing is very hard, and I'm proud of what our team did. You know, we tried it to not accommodate, but to adapt to what the world's going through right now, and that's part of growth, right? We're adapting to the way the environment is. We're trying it out, and you know, I think it's cool. And who knows? 2 years from now, we'll be crossing my fingers. We'll be back in person, having those hallway, real hallway conversations. When somebody bumps into you and you can smell all the bad BO that's floating around in the conference rooms, because I actually kind of miss that, you know.
I miss the energy of people. Like you can feel a person's energy, and most of the time it's positive energy. We draw off of that as
it's a little difficult. Yeah, it's a little difficult virtual, but I think we tried it to pull people in and bring people together. So we'll keep trying. I think that's all we can do is keep trying, because until we go back to a normal world, if that's even the right word for it, until we go back to being in person again, we're gonna have to keep trying different ways.
Yeah, we're already planning the next one.
Yes, we are. I wasn't sure if we were allowed to say that, so it's kind of like.
Well, I'm putting it out there now, so it has to happen, right?
Sorry, Rick. We stole your thunder.
Fantastic.
Sorry, team. You heard it here first. I'm not giving you a date, but we certainly have, done lessons learned and gone, okay, so what are we going to do next time?
Nice. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously at home for a while. I mean, we are in the U.S. You're in Australia. I think you guys have a little more freedom, Sonia, than us.
Look, we do. We've just started getting our first vaccine doses. Going out to our frontline workers, and we'll see. Australia is still in this weird position where we are primarily seeing cases coming in through our hotel quarantine system, which is compulsory for 14 days for anybody coming into the country. That's where the majority of new cases appear, and they are quite well contained, but sometimes we are getting a little bit of community transmission. It might be a hotel worker that picks up an infection and they've been out in the community. And when that happens, we lock down quickly, and we lock down very tightly, including restricting or even banning completely travel between the different states of Australia. So that's the approach that Australia has taken, and because of that, it's strange talking to my North American colleagues and my European colleagues too, because we literally I can go to a restaurant, I can go to the movies, like all of those things without masks, because we have no cases of COVID in our communities. We still have social distancing, we still have contact tracing, so there's a lot of QR codes when you go places in case they do need to track back to who was at that venue at a certain time. But for the most part, we still have a lot of our freedoms back, which is, I know, a very different world than a lot of people are going through.
Yeah, I live outside Philadelphia, so my area actually is more cases than I believe than where Teresa is.
Yeah, we're a little more rural, but we're masked. Restaurants are open. I've a couple times dined out, but there's always this little thought in the back of your head. It's like, well, is it actually any more riskier than going to the grocery store? I'm not actually sure it is, because so few people are there.
I think it just depends. I have not been in the restaurant since February 28th, 27th with Warren Thomas, my other teammate. That was in Denmark. That was the last time I was in the restaurant. I have not been in the restaurant. I go to the grocery store. That's about it.
That's
Like I took my daughter shopping. We went shopping. Went twice this year, and it's just going in and out. It masked up. I usually do have gloves on, just because it's colder here. But yeah, we have more widespread cases than where Teresa's at.
You do. I think, I've gone shopping. I've gone clothes shopping. I just don't do it as often. Like I said, there's always that little lingering thought, well, maybe if I overindulge, it might not work out to my advantage. But if I go, I don't know, once every couple months and wear my mask and sanitize when I'm done, I mean, so far it's worked.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's the exposure too.
Mm-hmm.
So in and out of I'm in and out of the grocery store. I'm not hanging around. Restaurants, I just don't even go near. But especially like a smaller restaurant where it's very confined, and there I feel like you can't really social distance if it's a tiny place. So it's I'm gonna wait. I have I've already gotten I think most people I already got COVID. I'm still dealing with the long-term effects, but we actually got it. My father got it from someone that was asymptomatic, and he gave it to 14 people. And it was 3 homes. It was just, and it was our circle that he pretty much gave everybody in our family circle. We all got sick, and I don't want to get sick again. So I'm very let's just kind of, wait till the vaccine.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some immunity that we have, but nobody knows how long it's for. But, the fact that you still deal with the lingering symptoms and, whatnot, and it varies from person to person. Like one person in the house barely got sick, and then one person almost died. So you're like, it's the extreme.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I just tell people, just be safe. It affects everybody differently. That's all we can do, and wait till we can all get back together and be in a big conference hall and, give hugs and, like the photo I sent of us 3 at Ignite was that 2019 or was that 2018?
Was that the one I shared with you recently? What was
Yeah.
the 3 of us in front of that Ignite sign?
I think
that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think it was 2020.
That was such a wonderful photo. I love that photo.
So one of these days we will be back again. Until then, thank you so much, Sonia, for joining us. sort of a reunion, and it's interesting how our jobs all have changed, and now we're teammates. And yeah, Teresa works for a partner, so it's great.
It's awesome. Thank you for the invite. It's lovely to come and hang out with you again.
Thanks for
Thank
coming,
you.
Sonia.
And everybody, thank you again, and have a great evening.